Everyone, if I could have your attention, please. There's still a few people coming in, but we want to get started, kind of respect your time here. Plus, for us Ventura people, it's really hot in this room. I don't know about for you people who live up here, but we consider this really warm. And don't want to have you sitting in this room any longer than you have to. Thank you all for coming today. We really appreciate it. I think it's been in the works, and it took us a while to pull all of this together. I know you're anxious to get as much information as possible, so I'm going to keep my remarks very short and focused on thanking the school district for letting us use this room. Really much appreciated, because we are trying to get out to you, get out to the community rather than have you come to us down there in Ventura. Secondly, I want to thank Supervisor Bennett's office. They helped us with all these arrangements. Brian Brennan is here from Steve's office. And if you have any questions for them, I'm sure Brian will be happy to answer them. And before I turn it over to Ruben Barrera, he's the county building official. He's going to kind of run through a presentation kind of highlighting the process. Just want to let you know we've got a lot of folks here in the back from the county, from a number of departments, to talk about the issues that we're all going to be out there for you to deal with, be they water, fire flow issues, septic systems, things of that nature. They're all here. And after Ruben's presentation, we want to leave as much time as possible for your questions and answers. And then, of course, after having some of those general ones, we'll have the staff here, and you can ask them about specific details of your property and what have you. So with that introduction,
who are you?
Good point. Sorry about that. Don't you all know? I'm Chris. I'm Chris Stevens. I'm the director of the county's resource management agency, and that includes the planning department, the building department, and the environmental health department, as well as some others. And so a lot of the rebuilding process kind of resides within my agency, so that's why I'm here today. So with that, thank you for that. I'm going to bring up Ruben Barrera. He's our county building official, and he's going to kind of run through a presentation for you. And as I said, we're trying to leave as much time as we can for questions and answers and for you to talk to staff. So take it away, Ruben.
All right, thank you. And thank you all for taking the time to come here and listen to us. But before I get started, I just wanted to say a couple of housekeeping notes. There is some water there. It's cold water in that cooler. You're welcome to get some water there. There's also some cookies. Restrooms are just outside to the right. And if you haven't signed in, please sign in on the sign-in sheet. I think it's full on the one side, but you can always go to the reverse side. So with that, let me get started with this. Okay, so, excuse me. Okay, so again, thank you. And we're very glad to be able to help you here. Before I get started with that presentation, I wanted to introduce just really briefly some of the county staff that's also here to answer questions and to help you out. These are the people that are at the administrative or at the government center, helping you with the permit process as well as I am. So we've got some of the county staff. We've got environmental health. We've got Bill and Sean, and we've got Charles. I'm sorry. Do I need to speak up a little bit?
I just need you to point out who you're talking about.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. So we've got Sean and Bill and Charles from Environmental Health, and they deal with private sewage disposal systems and water quality for private water wells. And then we're going to go over that in a little bit more detail later. So there's another opportunity to go over that. We've got Susan Curtis from Planning. We've got, we've got Matt Wyatt from Building and Safety, and I'm from Building and Safety also, as well as Roman Smith. We've got Javier from the Energy Alliance, and we've got Mr. Doug Leeper from Code Enforcement, Code Compliance. Anybody else from the county? Oh, I'm sorry, Ray from Public Works, and Jim Otusa, who's I think outside. Or Jim Otusa's over there. We've got Barbara Council from Public Works. And we have Ryan from the fire department. And lastly, we have Rick from the Contractor State License Board, who came from Sacramento to give information about contractors hiring, et cetera. Okay? All right, so The purpose of the meeting is to help you understand the building permit process and explain some of the specific provisions that we have and that we will follow for issuing building permits for your new house or your new structure that you lost during the fire. We also wanted to share information about how to avoid some of the pitfalls and delays and surprises during that process because it's complicated. And so we want to help you understand it better so that you know what questions to ask, who to talk to, and what to do. And we have a lot of information here, so take advantage of this. I want to go over a brief presentation that's about 15 minutes long, maybe 20 minutes long. And then after that, we want to allow some of the agency reps to share with you some of the information that they think may be important to share with you today, as well as allowing you to ask any questions that you want to ask us, that you've been wanting to ask us about. And by the way, as I'm going through this, please feel free to interrupt at any time with additional questions. If you have any questions along the way, please stop, because we know that you are property owners and not necessarily familiar with the process, and we want you to understand it better. And so just ask us at any time. Okay. So let me just say something about something that you already know about the Thomas Fire. So we lost over 200 homes in the unincorporated area. About 250 other structures that were not homes, barns, detached garages, and accessory buildings were also destroyed, and about 50 buildings or more that were seriously damaged and need to be repaired. Okay? Obviously, you have been through a lot, and the Board of Supervisors and the county want to help you get your lives back to normality. The county's environmental, let's see, so where are we at this point? So the county's environmental health department and Cal Recycle have overseen the debris removal process and are pretty much done with that. There's been a lot of debris that's been cleaned up, and gladly most of that has been done. So the next phase is going to be rebuilding and reconstructing your homes or reinstalling some of those accessory structures. The county has issued over 300 permits for temporary power poles and temporary housing, demolition permits, and that kind of thing. And the Board of Supervisors has directed the county to make all resources available to assist and help property owners with repairs and reconstruction, which means we want to help you through the process to get those permits and get the buildings redone or rebuilt. The Board of Supervisors also ordered the streamlining of the fire reconstruction permit process. As some of you may already know, if you've already been through that process, it can be a very long process, especially once you submit your construction drawings for review to Building and Safety. That can take a while. Sometimes it's taking about 6 to 8 weeks to get that first review. But the Board of Supervisors has asked us to streamline these permits. So one of the things that we're going to be doing is reviewing those within 10 working days of your submittal so that you can get that process going and get your permits right away and start construction. Okay?
Can we ask questions as we go along?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Whenever you said that 10-day process, does that mean whenever they're going to get resources, they actually can go out and like third-party more resources?
Yes.
So you actually can bring on more staff to?
We have just entered into 2 contracts with private plan review services firms that will be assisting us with the excess demand in plan review services. But most of the plans for the actual reconstruction permits will be reviewed in-house by our staff. We're going to be sending some of those other projects for normal construction to these consultants. Okay? Yes?
The expediting is just in building and safety, correct?
Well, everybody's going to be expediting your projects, but the 10-day turnaround is a building and safety plan check turnaround. In some cases, with the other agencies, it'll be actually less than that. But I don't want to speak for them because some cases are a little bit more difficult. But usually,
I've been 6 months in planning.
right, well, okay. But usually, during the building permit process, the building and safety review is usually the longest. And that's the one that we are guaranteeing we will do within 10 days from the day that you submit the plans for review by us. Okay? All right.
Structural review, but obviously we're not a lot of us are in a position where our houses burn down and we're not building the same building we had, or the same square footage or less. Is this gonna cause an issue? Does that throw us back to the back of the line because we're building something that's slightly smaller than what we had? And
Okay, so that's a very good question. If you are not building the exact same footprint or smaller, and you decide to build a bigger house, is that going to take you to the end of the line?
I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
No. In building and safety, we will process your review within 10 working days regardless. Okay? Smaller, same, or larger, we're going to process those right away.
Okay.
Okay? Now, that being said, sometimes when you build a bigger house, there are other
Well, I'm talking
complexities
smaller-
and
I'm
requirements
talking
that come into
smaller
play.
house. And just that, I lost my house and I'm building something that's slightly smaller.
Yeah.
And doing that, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a.
It doesn't have to be the
it's
exact
not-
same
it's
house.
not- It's not apples to apples.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be the same house. Okay, very good. Okay, so just real briefly, if you already understand the process, just bear with me a few minutes. I want to explain in a few kind of very condensed steps. So the first thing to do is to visit the county agencies to learn and understand the requirements for your site. If you don't already understand what those requirements are, we'll explain to you who you need to go visit so they can tell you what the requirements are and what types of things you need to deal with so that your designer can incorporate some of that information into the design of your new home and go through the process much more quickly. Okay? If you don't understand that up front, your designer is going to design something that is not going to be approved, and it's going to take more iterations of reviews, and it's going to delay your project.
When you say agencies, can you provide a list of those?
I will provide a list for you. There's a couple of lists up front at the table or in the back at the table, but I will go over those in more detail in just a minute. All right, so once you've done your research and your homework, those requirements have to be incorporated into the design of your project. So you will be working with your designer, whether it's an architect or a designer or an engineer or all three, to get that information on the plans. And when you do that, these agencies that I will get into in a little bit more detail will give you a clearance. We refer to those agencies that you initiate your conversations with as a Group A list. The Group A agencies, which they're in the beginning before you do your plans, because you need to understand what's needed to be put on the plans before you do them. So your Group A list is very key and very critical for you to talk with and get those clearances before you submit plans to building and safety for review. Okay, again, I will explain what agencies those are. Once you have those Group A clearances, then you go to the building and safety counter and submit those plans with a building permit application so that building and safety can review the detailed aspect of your project relating to the structural system, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, and anything else that's related to the building standards and how to construct the foundation, the roof, everything else. Okay? But you don't want to go to building and safety before you've talked to these agencies, because building and safety will not accept your plans for review, because these agencies may have something that we refer to as a fatal flaw, and if it hasn't been addressed, you may have to go back and redesign your project. So it's very, very important that you talk to them first. Yes?
Where does manufactured housing fit into this process?
It's in exactly the same place as a normal house.
Okay, so you bring in because I thought, so if I'm ordering up a manufactured home,
Yes.
I don't think they're gonna give me full working plans of every stud and every outlet in their plans. They'll give me a foundation plan that obviously has to be okay based on my soil tests and so on. But you're actually gonna look at a manufactured house and go through that outlet by outlet and whatever, or?
Okay, so the question is, if it's a manufactured home that's already built in the factory,
Right.
is building and safety going to review every stud, every connection, and every detail? The answer is no. If it's a manufactured home that's been inspected and approved with an approved plan by the state, all we look at is the foundation system and how it's anchored to the foundation. But you still need to identify your Group A clearance requirements because it still needs to be connected to water, to sewer, or private sewage disposal system, and all that has to be ironed out, and the placement of the building on the site so that it's not too close to some other hazard. So we need to get that squared away, and then when you submit it, that'll be a slightly easier process for manufacture because obviously we don't review
But
everything.
if we're going back to the same footprint where we were told we're going to be grandfathered in, we should be cleared, correct?
By whom?
By planning, I assume, if you're going back to the same footprint
Yes,
where you
yes.
have the existing home, where we're just replacing the one we lost.
Yes, in most cases, yes. But there are some cases where, I mean, I don't want to be a pessimist, but there are some houses that were never permitted to begin with. And so planning needs to,
Well, no, I understand that.
Right.
Mine was permitted, it was already a manufactured house to begin with.
yes. And I don't want to speak for planning, but generally, the answer to that is yes, you can just rebuild, and then that approval process for Group A will be a lot
We
easier.
still have to deal with all the infrastructure things you're talking about, sir.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, yes.
And Group A is a separate time frame from the 10 days you talked about?
Yes, the Group A process is before we get that 10-day turnaround because when you're dealing with your Group A agencies, you have not submitted to building and safety.
Right, Group A is Public Works, Environmental Health, Planning,
Exactly. And so you may be dealing with questions like, okay, you need to go out and get a geology report, for example. Just an example, not all properties need that. But if you did, it may take a while for you to get that geology report. And they'll probably tell you that, within a few days. But it's going to take a while for you to get that report and then incorporate those recommendations from the geology report into the plans. Okay? So yes, the 10 days comes after you submit the construction drawings to building and safety. Okay? All right, very good. I just replicated this slide from the previous. So once you submit your building permit application with the drawings, then you need to finalize your approvals because there are some approvals that we don't need up front, but you're going to need later. I'm going to discuss those in a little bit more detail, but we call those a Group B clearances. So, for example, the fire department may want to look at your plans for the fire sprinklers. We're not going to ask you for that up front, but we will ask you for these things before we issue a building permit. Okay? So those are Group B clearances, and we will instruct you what those are for your particular site. We don't have a catch-all list that applies for every property. Every property will have its own individual Group A and Group B list, depending on its location, depending on the scope of work, the project, etc. Okay?
Getting back to manufactured housing.
Yes.
With fire department requirements, we need to get those up front so that when we order the manufactured house, they know how many sprinklers or where to put them. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's why it's so important to talk to your Group A list, which includes the fire department, by the way, up front and early.
Okay, I thought you said they were Group B, but now.
They're also a Group B. So there is some information that they need up front. You come in, submit your application for a permit, and in the meantime, you get your fire sprinklers and get all that information approved by fire, and then we issue the building permit.
And that's in Camarillo, we have to go to get that all done?
Yes, it's Camarillo's our main office, but we do have a representative from the fire department every Thursday at the Tuesday and Thursday at the Ventura office here at the Government Center. Okay, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Okay? All right, very good. And then once you get those Group B clearances, then you can get a building permit. So hopefully you get the Group B clearances, you get your building plans approved by Building and Safety, and then we issue the building permit. Once you have that building permit, you start construction, and then we just do some inspections along the way, and then we certify the building at the end when it's done. So the toughest part is up front and early, in the early stages, to get all that information coordinated and processed by your engineer into the plans. That's the tough part, because if all that is done, we will review it, approve it, issue the permit, and then the work for your contractor is easier. He has an approved set of drawings, which are the instructions for your project, and he'll just build off of that, and hopefully that goes smooth. And then as soon as it's done, we will certify the building and issue what we call a certificate of occupancy so that you can occupy the building. And we release utilities, water, gas, etc. So in a nutshell, that's the process. Okay? Let me talk a little bit about those agencies that we've been talking about, because you need to know what each one of them do. Okay, so these are the Group A clearances. Now, they don't all apply to every project, but most of them do. So planning, you know, they're going to look for things like the legal lot status, the building setbacks, the building height, parking requirements, and other zoning requirements. Okay? They're going to look for things like that and identify any major issues and tell you about those early on. So it's important that you go to them right in the beginning. I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Environmental health, their counter is right next to planning. Okay, they look at things at this stage. They look for private sewage disposal systems, because if you cannot accommodate a system on your property because you don't have enough room or enough percolation or whatever, that could be a problem. So you want to know about that early. Okay? So they look for things like that. And if you have a private water well, they look at water quality issues to make sure that the water is producing safe water, that the well is producing safe water. Okay? Stop me along the way if you have any questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
You know, you're talking about rebuilding houses that were there that had sewage systems and wells that were serving the houses that were present. Why do they have to jump through all these hoops to prove that, you know, the fire didn't destroy the well, the fire didn't destroy the septic system? Why do you have to like dig up your septic system to prove that it's working?
Okay. So the question is, if there was already a private sewage disposal system on the site that the fire did not destroy, why do we have to go to environmental health to have them approve your project to move through building and safety? Anybody from the environmental health? Charles, you want to come over here? Charles.
How you doing? My name's Charles Gankel. I'm with Environmental Health. I'm the manager for the My name's Charles Gankel. Hear that? I'm with manager with the Technical Services section of Environmental Health. My department's responsible for the installation of on-site wastewater treatment systems, commonly referred to as septic systems, and we also do the water quality. The reason why you're going to want, we want to be able to certify each system before they get installed for a new building. If you have,
All you're doing is
They're
building
working, already working.
Yeah, they're
perfect,
already working.
and that's great. If you have an existing system, we're not going to require you to get a new system. We just want you to certify that that system is still operational. It's meeting the demands, the current demands, so that it was originally permitted for, and we want to ensure that it meets current code standards. If your system was installed years ago and it was a permitted system and it was code conforming, it's likely that it'll be able to be permitted again, regardless of certain requirements. However,
Why can't you just like hook up to it? If it was working before?
well, we have no guarantees at this stage that these systems were operational or permitted before
See,
effect.
common sense tells me, then why aren't you going around to all the homes that didn't burn and making them do the same thing with their septic systems, because they might not be functioning properly anymore. And see, this is where it doesn't add up to us, because the fire took our homes. It wasn't my choice to give up my home and rebuild another home. I didn't take a bulldozer and knock it down because I want to rebuild. I can understand going through all these hoops if that were the case. But I had no control over the fire. Okay, that took my home. That was involuntary. My systems were all working. My well was working fine for me. My septic system, we've been there for 30 years on that property. Everything was permitted per codes, okay? So it just doesn't make sense that we have to go back and redo these things that we are already permitted for and treat us as a class of homeowners that is very different than our neighbors who did not lose their homes. And that's where the rub is on this whole thing.
Back in January, I sat in this room, and the officials assured everyone that they would rebuild, they were going to streamline. If you had a working sewer system, a working water system, they were going to let you just hook back up to it.
And we're
Now we're being told you have to
grandfathered in.
dig them up, you have to prove that there's a that there's a leach field, you have to do this, that, and the other thing. Why? They were there, they were working.
These are new structures that are going in,
They're
and as
replacements.
They're replacement
great,
structures.
yeah. So there's different categories that we're having to deal with here. Replacement structures, some structures were not permitted. Some structures were existing years and years ago. Some of them have cesspools. One thing that you may not be aware of is that our department, when you come to our counter and we issue a permit for a septic system, there's a building code standard for that. The other thing that we're doing at that point is we're authorizing a discharge. That authorization comes from the Water Quality Control Board. We're under obligation through an MOU with the Water Resources Control Board to ensure that these systems meet certain standards so that they're protective of water quality. So that's another reason why we're ensuring that these systems, for example, a cesspool, if you had an existing cesspool, we cannot certify a cesspool. We know that they exist in the county, but when they come up for a repair or permit or a new installation, we cannot certify those cesspools. You have to upgrade to a current septic system or connect to
Yeah,
sewer.
no, that's understandable, but if we have a working septic system
We just-
with legal leach fields
Right.
that we were permitted to get my original building
Just
permit.
to assess on this?
So a lot has happened with the fire, right?
And your insurance company doesn't cover that cost.
A lot of things have happened with the fire. You had the debris removal process. You had a lot of heavy equipment. Some of these may have damaged leach lines, seepage pits. Some of them have damaged tanks. We know for sure that there's at least a dozen septic systems that were damaged as a result of the debris removal process. We want to ensure that your system is operational, and it's a matter of getting a pumper's report through a certified contractor to ensure that that system is operational. We have to make sure that they're working properly. You're constructing a new home in this regard, and we want to make sure that that new home meets at least our permitted standards for a septic system. We consider them existing systems. So if you had an existing permitted system, there's a good chance that your system will likely be permitted again. However, we have to evaluate that, ensure that it's not, for example, your leach line is not going directly into the creek, into a water table, and that we have seen all those things. We want to make sure that it's done properly.
Can it be re-inspected and certified?
Absolutely. All the systems that we're looking at, if you want to reuse an existing system, we're requiring that you get a certification. We've waived our certification fees for the counter, so we want to make sure that you come in. Each system will be looked at. We have permitting records that are online. There's a handout in the back that kind of details a summary of the requirements and some of the scenarios. I can't speak to all the scenarios that each of you may have, but I can tell you that we are trying to streamline that effort to make sure that you guys, we get a chance to look at all these.
And we have various pumpers, people who pump septic systems that are certified to do the inspection.
Yes.
You're talking about that, right?
Just like
They
your-
put a camera down and want to make sure you don't have cracks.
Correct. Just like when you go through the process of building a home, you'll need to construct a septic system. If it's existing, then you need to hire a contractor to do what they call a pumper's report. But that pumper's report will establish whether the system is operational. It'll tell us what the size of the tank is. In some cases, we don't know. We don't want you to build a brand new 10,000 or 10-room home on a septic system that's too small for that. It's really hard for us to decipher. Sometimes our county records aren't accurate. So we want to make sure that the number of bedrooms matters, the number of plumbing fixtures matters to what your system can accommodate.
If we come to you with a downsizing, like
These
you
are all
said.
things that you
Excuse
normally
me.
do for any remodel. What are you doing to help us expedite basically the process through your department? Because what I'm hearing is it's exactly status quo, except you said you were waiving the fees for what?
For the certification, for a full certification, if you come to our counter and you want to get your system certified, which is a requirement for Rubens Group, for the building
Okay, What are
department.
you doing for us? What are the things that you're helping us with? So you are basically saying fees are reduced. Are you helping us with lists of pumpers? Are you helping us with other things? What is it that you're doing for beyond the normal?
We do have a set of resources that are available online. We also have staff that's available during counter hours. We also are streamlining our process as well. Our turnaround times are going to be within 2 weeks, likely sooner, for anybody who's identified as being a victim of the fire.
Are you providing lists of credible, like pumpers and people who are providing a report? Because I just went through the permit process a year ago, did not get through in time, so now I've not been able to build. But bottom line is trying to find a credible pumper. It was paper that they gave me. It wasn't anything else. And it cost me $450. The leach line was another $580. The water test was another almost $1,000. You know, having the flow test, it was another. So what is it that you're helping us get through this process with? Because each one of those places I had to find on my own, and I had to pay the money out to give to your department. Can you at least help give us a credible list of people?
Unfortunately, we cannot provide a list of contractors. It's something we don't do as a county, is make recommendations on which contractors to use. One thing I recommend you do would be probably a great idea is to go online. You can look up your property or neighboring properties. You can see existing permits that we have there. They may have reference to other contractors. You can see the type of work that they do, and maybe you can find someone with that.
Is at least the work that I did a year ago valid?
If you're permitted in the system, I recommend looking up your permit and seeing if it is. If it is, I'd say you're likely in good shape.
Is a year-old water test, less than a year-old water test valid?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
One more question. I'd like to turn it over to Ruben.
I'm wondering if we put in a gray water system, does that reduce the size of the septic that we put in?
Unfortunately, no, because there's a section of the plumbing code that requires a connection to sewer with a diverter valve, and because of that, we do require that it's part of the system. It does increase the load. I'll be around if you have more questions.
Thank you, Charles. Okay. All right, moving right along. So we talked about environmental health, Public Works Agency. They look for things like geotechnical hazards. If there's a soils problem or a geology problem of some sort, they will let you know, and they review the reports by the soils engineer to make sure that the reports are valid and that those reports can be used to design your foundation system. If you're going to be moving any dirt, I believe it's 50 cubic yards or more. Ray, is that correct? Right. Then you need a grading permit, and they will let you know what the process is to get that grading permit. Flood zone requirements, if you're in a flood zone or in a floodway area, there are some very specific requirements to address in placing your home and designing your home, so they'll give you that information. And if there's a private well, water well, then they look at the water flow requirements for that well, as opposed to environmental health, who looks at the quality of the water. They look at the quantity of the water that's going through the well.
Now, question.
Yes.
You realize we're in a serious drought. Wells have not dried up necessarily, but they are way down. A lot of us are not going to be able to pass a flow test right now. We did to get our original building permits, okay? And we're exchanging homes. We're replacing an existing property. And I don't know if maybe Brian can answer this question, but I've been calling supervisor's office for District 1 continuously trying to find out if we can't get a waiver on these pump tests, because there are a number of us that are not going to be able to get our building permit because our existing wells are not going to meet that pump flow test right now at this point in time. Unfortunately, the fires came during a drought.
Yes.
If we were in a wet period, we'd probably be just fine.
Okay. Barbara Council will help you with that information.
Yeah, Barbara Council from the Groundwater Section, Public Works Department. I was literally on the phone with my boss 2 minutes before this meeting started, and he informed me that if your existing home was on a water well and you're building the same footprint, you don't have to have another pump test. Yes. So if you change the footprint of your building, though, if you add a bedroom, if you add anything to it, that's another water requirement, and then you have to, there's a couple things you can do. If you had a pump test, and we have records of the pump test, and it still meets the requirements for your new structure, even if you add a room or two, if it still meets the requirements, then you don't have to have another pump test. Yes?
So if we're changing the footprint, but not getting bigger, just changing the orientation.
If you're flipping or changing the rooms around, that's okay. That's not another water use or water requirement. It's if you're adding rooms, that changes the water requirement. But if you're just flipping the footprint or, rearranging your rooms, but the same number of rooms and the same uses of those rooms, then you don't have to have another pump test.
Barbara,
That
just a
is if
question
yes.
Oh, go ahead, finish that, and I wanted to ask you a
Yeah, I
question
started to
for
say
that.
that as if we have one on file, but it doesn't matter. If you were already using your well, and I asked him, well, what if it's been damaged by the fire? He said, that's the property owner's problem. If you get it repaired and it works, it's fine. Okay.
So same number of rooms, but
Love.
what about additional square footage? Let's say it's a different footprint, but it's the same square footage,
If it's,
but maybe
well,
a different number of rooms.
the way we evaluate pump tests is on the number of bedrooms in the house.
Okay.
Okay, so if you change your footprint and you have fewer bedrooms, then you're still okay. If you change your footprint and you add 3 bedrooms in the place of 2, then that's a different water requirement.
Okay.
It's,
Or you make sure that they're labeled 2 bedrooms and 1 den.
it's still a room that could be converted to a bedroom. If you have a barn with a bathroom in it that could be converted to a living space, that counts as a bedroom.
So fixture units.
Yeah, we don't count fixtures in the groundwater section. We count bedrooms or rooms that can be converted to a bedroom. But if you already have your well and it was supplying your house, you don't have to have a pump test. Yes.
Okay, I was told by the fire department today that if we keep with the assessor's original footprint or the same square footage, that our system can be grandfathered in. But if we increase the square footage by 10%, which I know the assessor's office, then we would have to meet the state requirements for the water system.
The fire department regulations are different from ours. They're totally separate.
Fire department regulations.
Yeah.
And people should know that.
Yeah, you have to meet the fire department regulations, though I don't think they worry about the flow, the gallons per minute your well will do. Yeah, for that, you have to worry about that. But their regulations are totally separate from ours, but you have to meet theirs. So sometimes it gets really complicated. If you have a well that's supplying your house with water, and the county, our groundwater section doesn't have a record of it, we would want to visit the site, get its GPS location, and assign a state well number so that we can get it into our records. That's the only requirement you would have.
So,
Yes.
Public Works groundwater is saying that if our well was there before, then a flow test is not going to be required.
Correct.
Charles, is water quality going to have to be addressed as well?
Yes, it is.
It is.
Even though we've been drinking that water for 30 years?
Yeah, you might want to have your water quality checked now and then, even though it's not required, because you have no idea what you're drinking.
Actually, we buy RO water anyway, because it doesn't always taste great. It has high iron.
Yeah. So it's really a good idea to get your water quality tested every couple of years. If you're drinking the water, even if you're using it for brushing your teeth and stuff, you should get it checked every couple of years. It's not that expensive, and it's really a good idea. You could be drinking bacteria all the time and you don't even know it. So it's really a good idea. Something else popped in and out of my head. Now I can't remember what it was.
I'm sure somebody will ask.
Yeah, probably.
Remind you.
Okay.
Okay. Oh,
That's one other, and I hate to digress here, but this legal lot status, I'm sure a lot of us have the same issue, that, the records are all burnt up, we've had these homes for 100 years, and my understanding, I may be wrong with this, is that piece could be months in the making to prove you have a legal lot. Is there any tricks that we can, or that you can advise us of to get us through that? Because I'm sure there's,
Yeah.
what was that cutoff when the fire happened?
Thank you, Barbara.
What was the cutoff? Susan, did you want to address that? So the question is, if it's an older home that has been there for eons and suddenly we need to check the legal status of the lot or some of these other planning issues. Does it still have to comply even though the house has been there? Go ahead.
Good afternoon, I'm Susan Curtis with the Planning Department. And the legal lot status is that if you don't have, if the structure was not permitted, that's where we have to check the legal lot, because if your structure was permitted, either the legal lot status was already verified and/or you are allowed to build there because the entitlement or the entitlement to build was given to you. So it really comes into play with unpermitted structures, because the county has a policy that you cannot build on a lot that is not legal. However,
Were a lot of those records lost?
I don't know the status of the records, but I do know we work really hard to verify, and we work with the surveyor's office to track down and verify the status of the legality of a lot. And that is something that we work closely with the surveyor's office on doing. So even if it wasn't a permitted structure, we still would do work with you to do the due diligence to try to find the legality.
Is there any tricks on it? Because I've gone through this process and it just doesn't exist. It was built, like in the early 1900s. Been there for 100 years, been assessed and all that. Just by assessor's parcel, does that lie? Because I can hear, been told horror story, this is a costly, time-consuming mess. And then in fact, a lot of the records were lost, right?
I don't know about the property records, but I can tell you on the scenario you just described, that structure was built before permits were required. It is therefore a legal structure, and you are allowed to rebuild that structure. Okay? And we still have permit records in our building department. We also have the assessor records, which also include information which would, in your case, indicate that the structure predates the permitting requirements, therefore you're a legal non-conforming structure. The assessor records are still a good source. So hopefully we find things in our building records. If we don't, we go to the assessor records, right? So, and then if we can't find them there, sometimes we just go to old aerial photographs to demonstrate that a structure was there. So we do as much research as we can to demonstrate that the structure is okay.
Thank you. And by the way, if your house was built, say, in 1942 or something like that, and there aren't any building permit records at the county, don't panic, because anything prior to 1949, we just didn't exist. We weren't issuing permits, so there aren't going to be any. So it's, as Chris was saying, they're automatically deemed legal. Okay? All right, very good. So let's see, was I done with this? All right, one other thing about the Public Works Agency, they will look at will serve letters for properties that are served by a public water purveyor. So there's public water serving your property, and if you are rebuilding a house that's larger than the original house, then we will refer you to the water purveyor, who will give you a will serve letter, basically saying, yeah, we will serve them with the additional water that they need in order to have water for this house. Now the house may be 100 square feet larger than the original, or maybe it's 1,000 or 2,000 square feet larger. In any case, they will give you a will serve letter that says that, yes, they will give you the water. Now, that being said, sometimes they will say that, and there really isn't enough water to serve, that structure. So that will serve letter needs to be verified and accepted by the Public Works Agency to make sure that they are, in fact, basing it on good information. And so you will have heard or will hear the words water availability letter or water availability report. What that means is that the water purveyor needs to have one of those reports on file with the county that proves that they have enough water at their source to serve all the properties in their area. And they need to have that. And so the Public Works guys will verify that water availability report is on file with them and that it's certified and it's okay. So that's going to be a little bit challenging if the water purveyor does not have that report. Yes?
Member of a mutual water company, 10 hookups. We're not part of the baptized group that can offer these reports.
Can you speak up a little bit so everybody can hear in the back? I'm sorry.
The water company is small, and I was told that if they can demonstrate the availability of water, they don't necessarily have to do their will serve letter. That's something that the water has been available to us and
Yeah, well, in the building department, we always look for the will serve letter if it's a new house or if it's an addition or something where you're adding square feet.
Okay, so this is not a new house, this is a replacement?
It's a replacement house, so as long as it's the same house, same square footage, you're okay. We're not gonna ask you for this. But if it's a larger house, then we're gonna ask you for a will serve letter, which automatically goes to the Public Works Agency for review. They have to accept it. They will not accept it if there is no water availability report on file with them. So that's an important consideration, because if you design a big house to replace a house that you lost, and it's maybe 1,000 or 2,000 square feet larger, you're gonna have to go get your will serve letter, which the purveyor may give you, but if the purveyor doesn't have that report, it will not be approved by Waterworks. And so you'll go back to the drawing board to redesign your house to be smaller. Okay, so that's something that's very important for you to consider.
Okay,
Yes?
if you're replacing your house with the exact same square footage as was there before, and the fire department has grandfathered you in, do you need this will serve letter or public works?
No, if it's the exact same square feet, you do not need this letter.
Okay, thank you.
Yes?
Back up to soils.
Back up to soils.
Okay, with public works still?
Yes.
I live up on Highway 33, and there is an overlay over our property map, which is our property has the potential for a landslide during seismic activity. And, well, let me say the map suggests that it does. How in-depth must the soils report and the geotechnical report be to address that issue?
Okay, so for that, I'm going to ask Jim Otusa. Oh, he's hiding over there in the corner. So the question is, if it's identified on the maps that the site is is prone to seismic activity or a fault zone, then what is Jim Otusa going to do?
Hi, my name is Jim Otusa, County Public Works Agency geologist. If you're in a seismic hazard zone, earthquake-induced landslide, your geotechnical engineer would have to look at that as part of the geotechnical report for your foundation study.
Oh, I called 6 soils engineers. 3 returned my calls, and on the 3rd one, he turned me down to come up and give me a proposal. We spoke frankly. He said people just don't quite know what's expected. I finally found a young fella. I told my wife I got a ringer. He's coming from Santa Maria, of Santa Maria Obispo County to do the soils. He doesn't quite know how to address that issue. He has said to me, we've gone up on the hillside, we've walked it, and he doesn't believe that our rebuild and the reconstruction of our home in any way is going to change the existing condition that's there. And he said he would be satisfied in adding that to his report in terms of what he thinks what the potential for that rockfall is. And that's about as far as he would like to go.
Then he'll put it in his report and submit it to me, and I'll verify if I agree with him or not. I may have to come back, and in the worst case, let's just talk worst case scenarios, there may be some mitigation schemes that you would have to put in.
Okay, but we would talk about that in grouping.
Yeah, I have to see what his findings were and what he based it on first before I could come back to you with something that would need to be done in addition to just accepting his findings.
Okay.
If you, in his scenario, if you stayed within the, say he is on a mountainside, which we actually have a lot like that, are you going to, as long as we stay within setback requirements, if the like and kind home has to be moved because of a geological issue, 40 feet, is that going to throw any crazy permitting issues, as long as you're within setback requirements?
If you're within setback and you want to
move it just because of a geological issue.
Then it won't create problems with me.
Yeah, move it along. Yeah, we have to control the slope, and you could like to move it over like 50 feet.
Yeah, you should be able to do that. Again, it's going to come down to what your geotechnical engineer says and his recommendations. But part of my goal, just so we're all clear here, is I don't want the next hazard to wipe your new house out. Or your replacement house, sorry. Your replacement house out. I don't want that to happen to you. So, okay.
Okay, very good.
Go back to corner.
In the red corner? All right, thank you, Jim. It's always a great idea to have your professionals contact some of these folks directly. Your professional engineer, your soils engineer, your geologist, those types of questions. Sometimes they're not familiar with the area. Just have them contact Jim directly. If it's a structural issue, have them contact building safety directly, etc. And so we'll be glad to give them the technical parameters or criteria that they can do their reports and their studies and design. All right? Okay, very good. So I'm a little bit, let's see. I'm sorry, can you give me a little bit of room with that leg, please? Okay. Site access. Fire department, they're going to look for things like a site access. We want to make sure that your property, if you decide to move it on the site, that you're still going to have site access. If a bridge burnt that gives you access to the building pad, you may have to rebuild that bridge before they will clear it. Correct me if I'm wrong, fire department, but they want to make sure that the house is accessible for emergency response purposes, as well as they want to make sure that there is going to be enough water so that they have a water protection in case of a fire at your house.
Been through 4 fires up here and haven't seen one pumper truck come to my house yet. There's not an access issue because nobody's trying to get access.
All right. Okay, well, what you're looking for and what we're going to be looking for is what we refer to as a Form 126. Form 126 at Group A level is basically saying that they have looked at your project and you're good to go to submit plans to building and safety for a review. Yes?
Question. Went through this with my building permit a few years ago, and we provided a turnaround place for the trucks and all that, which I have yet to see one. But so is there some reason why we're not grandfathered in on that? Do we have to pay more fees now to have somebody come up and look at the same access?
I am not saying you won't be grandfathered in, but we have Mr. Masood from the fire department here himself, County Fire Marshal. Masood?
Yeah, good afternoon. Masood Ragi, Fire Marshal. Sorry, repeat that question again.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we went through, had the fire department come out and on my original building permit and make sure we had access and we had to provide a turnaround area for the trucks. And so because my house pad sits back off the road a little ways, it's an acre and a half, so it doesn't sit way back, but it's back towards the back. And so I'm just wondering, do we have to go, if everything, the plot plan is the same, the pad's the same, do we still need to go through all this inspection again when I've already done that and it was approved by the fire department? Now, the one thing I probably will have to do, since I'm on a well and I've got 3 5,000-gallon tanks, I think we probably have, and I think it would be good for me anyway, is to have some kind of an installation where I have a hydrant that actually would accept common couplings for hookups for fire hose. So should somebody show up to help me with the fire, they could easily couple up and use the water that's there.
That's correct.
And I'm sorry, I'm rather pessimistic about this, but my experience, I went over here to our engine house this fall, before the fire, and anticipating fire season, and I told them about my water tanks. I said, would you please come over? I want you guys to see the access, where my tanks are, and make a recommendation. Is there something I need to do to assist you guys with hookups? He said, oh, we'll be over next week. Nobody ever showed up. And I went out of my way to try and make sure that our local station here would be educated about my property to help myself, also my adjoining neighbors. As I had a 35,000-gallon above-ground doughboy pool, and I had another 15,000 gallons. So I had, 50,000 gallons of water sitting there that could be used in the event of a fire. But there was just no interest. It's dumbfounding.
Well, even if you educate the local station, they're not necessarily the one who's going to respond.
No, I know,
We have,
there's turnover, right.
Uh,
But
yeah.
do they not have some sort of an area map that shows, okay, here's a pond here, here's water sources here? If they don't, they should have that, so that should the responding company maybe have a little Xerox handout, say, hey, if you go by our station, here are where the local water sources are. So if you run out of your 600 or 800 gallons of water, whatever they're carrying, they can tap in and use it.
in a fire situation, things get very chaotic.
Why not?
And it's very difficult to be able to have a map.
Sure.
Who's going to show up? I'm going to transfer that information to one person or one engine company that's going to respond to that. My suggestion is for you to have proper signage on your property that will point to where these tanks are located or what it is. So I would leave it really to the property owners to provide that information.
Okay, should I have just a single house fire in my home or a fire on my property? I would think it would be a good idea for our local station to know, where water sources are, and mine certainly is, or my neighbors' adjoining properties have a fire. They're more than welcome to use my water. If it saves my neighbor's house, great.
They do that. Isn't your water supply close to the access road?
One 5,000 gallon tank is about 20 feet off the road. The other two are at the far corner, about 150, 160 feet off the road.
They normally respond to the one that it is close to the road. That's where they can hook up. And they see that, they're trained to go to that one and take it. Any other station shows up, they will do exactly the same thing. That is a single structure fire which they would follow a very set protocol. Now, in a major incident,
Well, I know,
all
there's
bets are
so
off.
much- Yeah, I know,
Yeah,
because you've
so
got
that's-
all these agencies.
Yeah,
you know,
that is very
they're-
difficult to
They
do.
don't know where,
Correct.
they can't be inspected.
Correct. I'm sorry, yes.
As far as the permitting process, are you going to waive your fees as well for people who lost their homes in the house fire?
We are waiving the expedite fees, yes.
Expediting?
Yes.
What does
We-
that mean?
Well, we are getting it done within a short period of time, within that 10 days that I believe that you have said. So we are getting it, once your project comes in, it's part of the Thomas Fire, we're moving it ahead of everybody else and getting it done and through the process quickly.
Okay, so
Typically,
the fees are the same, it's just the expediting.
expediting fees waived, correct. Now,
I have one thing here. We lost a Long Beach firefighter. And I would like, have maybe a moment of silence.
absolutely.
His loss, you're aware of it.
Yes.
I'm
That's
a
why we're wearing
firefighter,
the,
so
yes, that's why we're wearing the black over our badge.
we do a lot of different things being firefighters. And this is not what this meeting's about, but I think we should maybe take them.
I agree with you. And so, yeah, very unfortunate, lost a firefighter in Long Beach due to an incident, a shooting incident. And that shows you what the firefighters are up against. I mean, even,
You never know what
you never know. I mean, a structure fires, or in this case, a shooting incident, their lives is in danger. And I would agree, let's take a moment of silence and remember the loss. Thank you. And thanks for bringing that up, appreciate it. I'm sorry, yes.
I have a question regarding the tank size requirement. I have a 2,500 gallon tank that got burned during the fire. And now and I lost my barn also, I'm trying to build a granny flat. So I'm wondering, like, is there a standard size? Because I have to change the tank. What size should I go next?
If you go to our website, there's a chart that tells you based on the size of a square footage, what size of a tank you need. And that is determined based on whether the fire sprinkler is coming off of that tank or not, domestic and fire flow, which is the hybrid. Based on those, it will tell you the size, or if you don't have the fire sprinklers, it will tell you what size as well. So it has two different columns depending on what you have. Yes, it's on our website, yes.
You're requiring that there's fire sprinklers that are gonna run off pressure pump that's electric?
Yes.
Or do we need to have a gas pump?
No, I'll explain that. Fire sprinklers are gonna be required regardless of the size of your structure. Whether you wanna build the same exact size or smaller or larger, they're gonna be required. That's the state law. So that is not going to be waived. The parts, and once that happens, depending on whether you're coming off of a water purveyor or off of a tank. If you're coming off of a water purveyor, if they have adequate pressure to supply your sprinklers, you don't need a pump. If they don't, the pump, the same pump that it is used for your domestic, it will be used for sprinklers as well. They don't need to have a backup or anything like that. It's part of the same domestic use. This is part of the same
So
exact
if
system.
power's out, they're not even.
They're part of the exact same system. They're not required. By code, they're not required.
So we don't need a separate pump for the sprinklers. My well guy that did my repairs on my well suggested that we probably have to have a second booster pump, a more powerful one to run sprinklers in the house versus the one that provides the domestic water pressure. So
You want it to be exactly the same pump because otherwise it will never get used and the fire pump will be, yeah.
It just sits there and it's
Yeah.
gonna freeze up.
It's the same pump and you have a pressure tank. It's sized to use it for sprinklers as well. It's the same thing, same system.
And then is there a standard, like so many sprinklers per square foot, or how
Yes.
is that on your website? Or actually, for manufactured housing, for the state, they would know that?
Yes, they know
Or do we have
that.
to give them additional information?
No, they know that. These are all based on code. The size, yes. It is
Because
not on our
we're
website.
looking at have sprinklers, and we know we're gonna have to have sprinklers.
Correct. It depends on any kind of beams. It changes the square footage coverage per head. If there are flat ceiling, changes that. So it's hard to determine that, but
But they
sprinkler-
will have, I mean,
They know
if I
exactly.
order a home from them, I don't have to give them additional information. They should know,
They
like I
know.
said, we have to have sprinklers.
They know.
They'll have all that information.
That's
So
correct.
I just don't want to have to be tearing the place apart.
No, they know that exactly.
Okay, thank you so much.
That gentleman had a question over there, and then this gentleman.
Sorry, go ahead. Who was
Standing.
standing? Good, sir.
A fire sprinkler plan, is that submitted along with your plans for the building, to be building and safety, or is that something?
No, something comes up later.
Later.
Yes. Once the 126 form is done, part of the Group A, the conditions are there that says you need sprinklers, then your sprinkler contractor will submit the plans later at a different time.
Those fire sprinkler plans are submitted to the fire department.
Yes, not to the building.
Not to building and safety.
Directly to
Yeah.
us, yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, yes.
I think there's one great flaw in the fire sprinkler system up here. The first time they have a brush fire, and we've gone through 4 of them that I know of, the power's cut off. And you have no water pressure whatsoever. By the time the fire gets up the canyon to you, you're sitting there with a jet fireplace. So I think that someone, one of these days, ought to come up with an idea, whether it's a mandatory or what, a backup generating system for these systems or a gravity pump. Because our next door neighbor's house was lost, there was no power. The first thing that goes out is power. And that's a great flaw in the system.
If you lose your power due to, let's say, a wildland fire, or whatever the incident may be, the sprinklers are typically designed for small size fires to start. And in residential, they're designed for small size fires starting to put that out. If a big size fires come in, or if your home is affected by a brush fire, the sprinklers will only do so much, even if the sprinkler system was operational. They're life safety. The sprinkler system for your home is only designed that if you are home and you are sleeping and you have a fire, or if you're home, you have a fire, you survive that fire. Now, they're also, if they put the fire out, technically you can say that that fire didn't get to a brush or some other thing. But mainly they're designed for your safety if you're home to survive the fire, for residential. Commercials are very different. That's why residential systems are cheaper and easier to install so everybody can afford it.
So sprinklers are required, in the wildfire zones, are they not required in the city?
They're required everywhere by the state of California, by state fire marshal. That means any home built anywhere in California will require fire sprinklers, regardless of the size, yes.
If your home was exempt from the sprinklers, my understanding is if you're gonna put a secondary home that was destroyed in the fire, that you also do not have to have sprinklers in that.
Are you talking about an accessory dwelling unit,
Yes.
ADU? The ADU laws are that if your main home is not, it does not have fire sprinklers, then the ADU, and there are some requirements, what constitutes an ADU, will not require fire sprinklers.
Trying to understand a little better. The system, the pressurized water system that's going to supply water to the sprinklers, for residential sprinklers, is the same system that's going to supply water to the residential.
Domestic. That's correct.
So this is one captive air tank and
Yes.
one set of pumps.
That's
for the entire
correct.
house.
One connection, 1 meter, 1 pump, 1 pressure tank, off of 1 system.
How big is that tank?
They're not that big. You gotta look at the sprinkler system, when it operates for residential, it usually requires about 25, 26 gallons a minute total.
So
It's not that much.
Measuring the flow of water coming into the house as to how big they'll want to size that.
It's not a high pressure, it's not a high volume for single family homes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Okay, you guys are asking some great questions. I'm trying to get through this slide here. Water supply, okay, I think we're good. Now let's see if this thing still works.
Can we get a copy
Oh,
of
can you
this
change those for me?
PowerPoint presentation?
I'm sorry?
Can we get a copy of this?
You know what?
We can post it on our webpage.
It's posted on, yeah, we're gonna post it on our webpage. We brought like 25 copies, because, you know, but we ran out. Oh, there's one for you, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so here are the Group B clearances, okay? The first ones, remember, Group A, are the clearances that are gonna allow you to submit plans to building and safety with your building permit application. Your Group B clearances are required after that. Once we've reviewed your plans and you're ready to get your permit, we will verify that you have some of these, if they're applicable to your project and your site, before we issue your building permit. So you need to make sure that you work on these as you're progressing through the plan check process. The plan check process is the process of reviewing your plans in building and safety, okay? So, in some cases, again, you have a private sewage disposal system. We just need a final clearance from environmental health that that system has been either certified, or if it needed to be, if you needed a new one because the first one was destroyed for whatever reason, they need to clear it, make sure that they're ready for us to issue you a building permit. Same for private water wells. You need to get that approval from environmental health. We will need both of those from them before we issue a building permit. Public Works, same, compaction report. If you're getting a grading permit, if you're in a flood zone, traffic mitigation, and construction waste recycling, all of those things need a final clearance from Public Works, okay? Sometimes that's not more than just a visit or a phone call, and they're pretty much good with your project because they've already reviewed it. Maybe they just want some letter or some verification. Whatever it is, you need a clearance from them for us to issue a building permit, because when we issue a building permit, you can start construction. So we need to get all this stuff cleared and resolved before you start construction. Otherwise, it's going to create all kinds of havoc. Somebody had their hand up. Yes?
What's this on traffic mitigation? And how, I mean,
Traffic mitigation.
what is that?
We have Ray from Development Services in Public Works, who might be able to explain a little bit about that.
Hi, Raymond Gutierrez with the Public Works Agency. I'm land development, I'm not traffic, but in general, I'm going to say like for like, you probably won't be charged a traffic mitigation fee. Okay, let's just go that way. I'm pretty sure that's going to do it. Ideally, new structures, more traffic, that's why you pay the fee to mitigate that. So like for like.
So we're not going to do traffic study and all that?
No. Okay.
Okay. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have a question on that?
Yeah, no,
Right.
how much is required on ag buildings to have no electric requirement?
On new ag, totally new,
No replacement?
I'm going to say if it's like for like, we'll work at not charging a traffic mitigation fee because you've already have an
I'm talking
existing.
about building permits.
Oh, the building permit fees? I'm going to get into that in just a little bit, but it varies and it depends on the size and scope of your building, okay, and your project. All right, we'll talk about fees in just a little bit. Okay, let's see, Public Works, Fire Department, sprinklers that we've already talked about, and then there are other agencies. If you are connected to a public sewer system, then we want to make sure that if you have a larger building than the original building that was lost, that they are going to be able to serve that building, which generally that's not going to be a problem. If you already have a sewer connection, you're going to be okay. We just need something from them that says that, yeah, that it's going to be okay, because sometimes they have issues with capacity of their system. And so if you lost, let's say, a 1,500 square foot house and you just want to build now a 3,500 square foot house, they just need to make sure that there's a capacity in their system to handle the added load. Okay? So that's all that is, but that, of course, only applies if you're connected to a public system. All right, and then school district for homes. Well, you know what? Just ignore that. It's school district. We're going to refer you to the school district. In many cases, in most cases, they're not going to collect any fees from you. But you know, if you are building a larger house, again, we just go to that magic rule. If it's a bigger house, they may collect a school district fee for the additional bedrooms, or however it is that they base their fees. I apologize, we don't have anybody from the school district here, but that's generally the rule. What we look for is just a letter from the school district that says that you've been there, and whether, you know, there are fees that are due, that they've been paid, or if they're exempt, that they've reviewed it and they've exempted your fees. Okay? All right, and then lastly, building and safety. We're the guys who issue your building permit, and we're like the clearinghouse, because we're going to verify all these Group B clearances are on file for that project, and that, you know, if those clearances are satisfied here, they will give you a letter or a stamp or something that you will bring to building and safety, and then we will issue your building permit. Of course, we will review your plans. By this time, hopefully we're done reviewing your plans for structural and mechanical, plumbing, energy conservation, all this stuff that we normally review for building code compliance, and then we issue the building permit at that point. Okay?
So we're issuing our drawings that will happen at the end of B, or excuse me, end of Group A.
I'm sorry, can you go back up, man? Sorry. Let's see, repeat that.
So these are Group B clearances. So we have final designs submitted to you as we enter into Group B.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and you want to make the most out of that time. So as soon as you submit your plans, you need to continue to work with those agencies so that when your plans are ready to be issued a permit, that you have all those clearances. Some people make the mistake that they don't talk to these guys until the very end. When they go to building and safety to get their permit, we say, where are your clearances? Oh, let me go over there and get them. And they think it's just going to the counter and getting a clearance. And they show up to see Jim, and Jim says, well, I don't have a soils report. Now you got to go back. You know, it's a hassle. So make sure that you utilize your time wisely, and through that building plan check process, that you're talking to them and satisfying your requirements for getting a permit.
So just from a sequence of construction, so we're going to have our sites, these will be partial permits if you're going to require that we have our compaction report complete for construction. When you get it, before that, you're going to need your civil reliefs, right?
Yes. Well, we need.
You can't supply the soils compaction report until you're out there digging around, right?
Right, exactly. So just before we issue the permit, because remember, when we issue a building permit, we're saying, go ahead and build. And that means you can put your foundation in. And you don't want to put your foundation in unless your soil is properly compacted.
We need a grading report.
You get a grading release first, you get a grading permit first.
Yes.
Then you'll get a building permit. So it's actually
Exactly.
a two-meeting process.
Yes, exactly. So to get that soils compaction report approved, there is a grading permit that's done by Public Works. And they will instruct you.
You need to have everything else done ahead of time before you need the building department.
Yes.
The building plan's basically all the way through before you issue a grading permit. Then you need to issue the grading permit, and then we get the building permit.
Yes.
Okay.
It gets a little confusing, but when you go to Public Works, they'll tell you, this is what we need in order for us to clear you for your building. So go to these guys early, okay? Now there is no particular order. Don't follow this order. You just need to hit them up and get your information, and then go to your engineer, make sure that he or she is addressing everything, because you don't want to start when you're ready to get your permit from building safety. Okay, very good. Yes?
I thought if you're under 1,000 square feet, you don't need a soils test.
Thank you for that. Generally, we do have a rule that if your house is less than 1,000 square feet, we will allow you to take a waiver and not get a normal soils report, that tells us about all kinds of other things. But we look for a design of the foundation system, assuming the worst case conditions anyway. But you don't need a report. You may have to build a bigger foundation than you need, but you don't need a report. So some people prefer to get the report anyway. If you decide that you don't want the report, we will waive the requirement for the report. But that's for the normal soils report. You still need a compaction report if that site was disturbed because they were removing debris, they were removing the old foundation system, and now you have that loose soil. You want to make sure that it's properly compacted. If it isn't, you're going to have nothing but problems. So you need to get that soils compaction report anyway. That's my point.
Is that a 90%?
90%. Is that correct, Jim? 90% compaction, is that our standard?
Yes.
Yes.
I was told that if there was even a 5-inch difference in elevation on the lot, that a soils report would be required.
That if there is a 5-inch differential in elevation on the lot, that a soils report is required. I'm not aware of that standard. Is anybody aware of that standard in the county?
That's what
No.
I was told by a county person.
Okay.
You're gonna weigh in. No, that's not true. That's not true.
Yeah, not true.
And you should advise your workers at the county.
Do you have a name or a counter name?
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes the information is confusing because they're looking for drainage, so you want to have maybe some elevation change just to get the water off when it rains, but it's not necessarily a soils report requirement. Okay, so it may have been a little bit of confusion.
The soils report waiver requirement doesn't apply if you're in the geotechnical landslide zone as well.
Thank you for that. Very good point. If you are in a known geologically hazardous location, you don't want to weigh that soils report requirement because chances are there's all kinds of specific design requirements for the foundation, and if you don't do them, you're going to have problems. So if you're in a known geologic or geotechnical hazard area, we will still ask you for that, even if you're under the 1,000 square foot size home. Okay? Thank you for that. Yeah.
Been there, done that.
All right, and been there, done that. And energy conservation, that's the other thing we look for, and that's a state requirement. All right, next. All right, couple of, another helpful tip and key resource. This right here is really the first step. You should have that note. If you don't have it, write it down. The first thing you want to do, if you haven't already started, you want to call and make an appointment with Mr. Winston Wright.
He's
now,
on vacation.
For the rest of the year?
Well, yeah, he doesn't take that much vacation. He's on vacation now, but he will make an appointment with him. I think he's back next week. But if not, there's usually somebody in the office that can help you. The idea is that you have a designated person that has been assigned the task of helping fire victims with the information that they need in a very customer-oriented, customized way that's specific to your needs and will give you all the guidance, the help, and the assistance in getting you started through that complicated process. Okay? So that's really the first thing you need to do. That's his telephone number there. You need to make an appointment. Usually, he will have somebody from Building and Safety in that meeting, or we'll schedule a follow-up meeting with a Building and Safety person to identify those agencies and any specific requirements that you have for your site. So it's really important that you start here. So don't just go to the government center and start hitting the different counters and asking just general information. Start here. Mr. Winston will give you a listing of the applicable agencies that apply to your project and your site, and then that'll give you a roadmap of where you need to go next and follow that. So that's going to be a very helpful starting point. Yes?
Not to be a jerk, but if you take 200 people times a 2-hour meeting times an 8-hour day, that's 50 working days, that's 10 weeks. Is that one guy now?
No. But the minute he starts feeling overwhelmed, we will get help for him, okay? So you will get your appointment, you'll get the information you need.
All right, I'd like to say, we met with Winston 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
And there were 6 of us, and he brought in people from all the agencies. That was a good meeting. He did give us a full 2 hours. We had tons of questions, our architect had tons of questions, and.
So he's already got something
and
on
one
it.
sort of on top
Yes.
of it.
He is very helpful, very knowledgeable, and he can give you the guidance that you need. Okay? Somebody had their hand up? No? All right, so anyway, any more other questions on this? Okay, next. All right, so the building permit application, all right? When you're ready to submit a building permit application to building and safety, this is what we're going to need. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to need your Group A clearances and a completed building permit application. You can get the application online, or you could come to the counter, get an application, fill it out there. We will ask you for your Group A clearances, and you need to bring in 1 set of complete plans. And I'll explain exactly what complete plans means. It means complete enough to review by our staff. It doesn't mean that if your architect is just kind of done with it for now, that it's ready for us. No, it has to be really complete. I'll explain that in more detail. So we need the 1 set of complete plans, and we need all of your agency clearances. In the case of planning, they will give you a stamped plan that says planning approval. That's your Group A clearance from planning. Bring that with you. So in a sense, you're going to come in with 2 sets. Okay? But only 1 clean set for us to review. And be prepared to pay a plan review fee. Although we are waiving, as Masood said, we are waiving the expedited review fee, which is several $1,000s, by the way. That you're not going to have to pay that, but there still is a review fee that pays for the cost of providing the service that needs to be paid at that time. Okay? There is a fee calculator tool at this website in the fees information section. If you want to have a pretty good idea about what the fees will be for your project, go here. It's a very easy tool. You enter the square footage, the fact that it's a house, whether or not you're going to have plumbing, electrical, mechanical, and basically that's it. And you hit enter, and it'll give you an estimate of fees that will break it down by everything. Plan check fees, permit fees, issuance, all that stuff. Yes?
Will that also have information about manufactured homes, if we bring in the foundation plan and the manufactured home?
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry, but I think it doesn't include manufactured homes. But let me say this.
I know
Because,
it's gonna be fees, I just want-
yeah, one of the things that it asks you for is for the value of the home, which it'll calculate for you given the parameters and the square footage. So in your particular case, if you just enter the value of the foundation, so let's say you're going to pay $15,000 or whatever for the foundation only, enter that. It asks you for the value of the entire house. In your case, just enter the value of the foundation, and it'll give you a fairly good estimate.
That's the part that has to be reviewed.
Yes,
obviously,
exactly.
Based on soil testing,
Right.
compaction.
Exactly.
Cool.
Okay. All right. Very good. Yes.
Actually, from the perspective, I'll speak in a few minutes from the contractor's board. What role should your contractor have? Normally, because we advise people to have their contractor pull the permits. Because we don't want people pulling them as owner builders if they're not doing the work. Should your contractor be there when you're doing this?
Yes, and I think that might be the next slide, but I'm not 100% sure. So yes, the answer to that is we recommend that you have your contractor pull the permit. Okay? Some contractors will prefer that you pull the permit as an owner builder, which the law allows. But there's all kinds of responsibilities that come with that. So we recommend that you have your contractor pull the permit so that he's responsible for calling and scheduling inspections when they're required. He's responsible for getting the final inspection approvals from fire, etc., and that you're not inadvertently assuming those responsibilities because you just happen to go and get the permit yourself. And some contractors will say, you know what, it's a lot easier if you do it, and I'll give you a little discount if you go get your permit yourself. And it sounds like a good deal, but it's not that great a deal. In most cases, it's best if you have the contractor pull the permit. Okay? Thank you. All right. And expect, you should expect at least 2 reviews that are going to be done for your plans. So you submit those plans. Don't assume that if you're going to bring them in, it's just a matter of us opening the plans, looking at them, and then approving them. You know, the reason they're with us for about 10 days, 10 working days, 2 weeks, It's because we're reviewing them in detail. There's a lot of detail in those plans. There are actual construction drawings. We look at every bolt, every nail, and every detail, and every note on those plans to make sure that you don't have problems in the field, that the contractor can actually do this right. So sometimes we will ask you for more information. Oftentimes, we will say, we need more information. So the designer or the architect needs to add details, notes, etc. And it's going to take, for a really good or pretty good set of plans, it's going to take at least 2 reviews. We have some projects that are not carefully designed. They go through our process, through our cycle of reviews, 4 or 5 times before the plans are approved. So you want to make sure that your designer submits complete plans and is paying attention to our corrections. If we write corrections after the first review and he ignores them because he's busy with something else, when they get resubmitted to us, we're still going to have the same corrections. We're not going to approve the plans, and they'll just go back once again, and eventually he's going to say, God, the building department is asking you for all these crazy things that I've never had to do in the last 30 years. So that's a common, thing that we hear. Okay? We've been asking for that stuff all the time. Most building departments ask for it. So make sure that these things are being addressed properly. Yes?
So when you finished your checks on the first review, will you call and set up an appointment so we can go over those comments? Because I've had problems with the clarity of the comments on drawings, and that's taken multiple times back with your department. So what's the process?
Okay, so thank you for that. That's a very good question. When we are done with the review, we will call you right away to pick up the plans. Now, that's not necessarily an appointment, but if your designer wants to discuss those, we prefer that he first go through the review and then identify any things that are unclear, and he can always call us and ask us or set up an appointment to discuss those things that he did not understand, because there's really not a whole lot of time that's utilized well if we go over everything with him. He only needs to go over those things that he doesn't really understand that well, that we didn't write clearly. So we prefer just to meet about that.
And you have standards with the subcontractors that you're going to have reviews these plans so that we'll have clear, concise comments on them?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. I've run into that problem, and it's taken a lot of iterations, and it hasn't been the fault of my designer. It's I can't read the writing, or they can't read the writing.
Yes, and we apologize for that. Sometimes we're going through things fast, and sometimes we write several dozen comments on the plans. And so if something is not clear, we'll be glad to go over those with you in detail. We'll set up an appointment. We'll do it over the phone. However you guys prefer, we will make ourselves available.
Because I think it'd be really helpful when you pick them up, when you call and pick them up, if you could talk to the person or talk to somebody about those comments. I think it would help the iterations.
Okay, that's good, but it reminds me of a very good tip I want to give you all. Okay? If the engineer or architect sends you to come in and pick up the plans, don't make the mistake of asking for explanation of those corrections to you. Because the engineer will explain everything to you, and not to offend anybody, but you may not understand about 90% of what we're telling you.
That's how they
And then when you communicate that to the engineer or architect, you'll communicate only 50% of that. So it's not a well-utilized time.
But Ruben, that's a bad assumption. That really is. And that's how they treat us, like we're idiots. And that's not fair. That really isn't fair.
We'll be glad to meet with you.
Okay.
But I'm trying to prevent frustration and delays for you. So that's my recommendation. But if you prefer to meet with us, we'll be glad to do it.
And just that you respond in 10 days with an email or a phone call, because I've had plans sitting in there for months. So
yes, we almost always respond or let you know via telephone call. Correct? Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, we're good with this? Okay, next. All right, construction drawings. This is what we want. They must be legible. They must be to scale. They have to be complete. We'll get a little bit more into that. They must be consistent with the Group A clearances. May be submitted electronically. This is a new service that we offer. If your architect wants to submit these electronically, it'll save some trips and some printing costs for you. So they can be submitted electronically. We review them electronically and notify you via email that the plans are ready and all the corrections are submitted back and forth electronically.
Do you have a format that you prefer?
Yes. It's very, very important that you follow the format. If you are interested in this, or if your architect will do this, make sure that he or she contacts us for specific instructions. It has to be raster, not vector. It has to be, 300 dpi resolution. And just we have all the specs. Okay. And by the way, it's very, very important that they follow those instructions to the T. Okay. It's got to, because if they don't.
I know why.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you. Good question. And then submit one complete site to building safety with building permit application. Okay. Yes.
So if they are submitted electronically, will the comments and revisions be also sent back electronically?
Yes. Yes, that's correct. Okay. All right. So what is a complete set of drawings? Okay, it has to include the architectural and structural drawings, the site plan, etc. There is a sheet that's on the table there that gives you a listing of all of the information that's needed on the plans. Now, most architects and engineers know all that, but if you're curious about it, you're welcome to look at that. And then, if you take it to your architect, he's going to say, oh, of course, I know. But we need to make sure they're complete. They need to include the structural calculations for engineered projects. You must include the SOLS report if a SOLS report is required. In other words, if it's under 1,000 square feet and it's exempt, then we're not going to look for this. But if one's required, then you need to submit that. Must include the energy conservation forms and documents. And for houses that are greater than 3,000 square feet, they must include plumbing and mechanical system plans. That's just your HVAC plan and your plumbing system. And if it's a house that's over 10,000 square feet, or if it's got a panel size of greater than 400 amps, then we need the electrical system plans for that house too.
Okay, 390 amps, which is what Edison seems to be doing. We don't need that.
Yeah, less than 400.
Okay, that's something new I heard from Edison that.
I haven't heard that, but
they're downsizing things.
Yes. Okay.
Who has the energy conservation form?
Okay, the energy conservation forms are available online, but these are usually done by your designer. Some designers will sub it out to a specialist designer that does this. A lot of people refer to these as Title 24.
So your architect does that?
Architect usually does it or has a consultant that he can recommend to do those.
Okay, but he's responsible.
Yeah. Yeah, make sure that you address that during your contract with your architect, because if it's unclear, he might say, well, no, it didn't include that. Okay, so make sure that they address that. Somebody had their hand up. Yes.
I haven't heard anything about, I haven't from you about arborist reports for oak trees, and if we're putting a house back in the same position it was underneath the oak trees, are we still required to have an arborist report?
Susan, can you help us with that question? Do we need an arborist report if we're rebuilding a house at the same location that was under, say, an oak tree, right?
And the oak tree is still there.
I don't think so. If it's an exact same footprint, I think the answer would be no.
No, we do not need an arborist report.
But if it's a different hole, we have to have one. We got one, and then we cut the bird trees down. According to the
Oh, you would need one to remove trees. I thought your question was that you weren't touching the trees, you were just building the house where it was.
That was, we wanted to put a house back where it was.
But you can't have the branches over your house.
Well, the question is just putting it exactly where it was, even if the branches were over the house before, and so now they just want to rebuild exactly in the same location.
Depending on the condition of the tree, you may need one to make sure that that tree is not a safety hazard for the house you're going to build under. It sounds like perhaps that's what you had to do. Yeah.
Couldn't hang over the house.
Yeah.
And who would we find out to give a yes or a no?
Winston would, and then we have another arborist in our office, Justin. What's Justin? Berlin. But send Winston an email and he can get an answer for you.
Okay, very good. Yes.
Again, on manufactured housing, the energy conservation forms, that is part of the manufactured housing.
Don't need to worry about it.
Don't have to worry about getting it.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. I got a couple of building and safety guys here. If I say something that's like totally off, just let me know. Okay. All right, we're good? All right, so just wanted to say this in case anybody may be interested. The county has, or the Board of Supervisors has asked that we prepare some standardized plans for ADUs or farm worker housing. And we did this even before the fire. They're available as standard plans so that anybody that wants to build one of these things, and we have 3 different models, can utilize that design free of charge without going to an architect or an engineer to design it for you.
I was told they were working on them, and as of 4 or 5 weeks ago, they didn't have them done.
No, they're done.
We got prints in January.
Yeah, they got prints in January, right? Yes, they're done now. So if you're interested, you can go to the counter or call us. We will send you the PDFs, or we can make a small copy available for you. The only trick with these is that the plans, you have to use them just like that. It's not a beautiful design, but it's a small house, 700, 900, or 1,200 square feet. And as long as you build it just like that, and you're not making modifications and changing things around, we will accept it. The only thing you would need to do is put together a site plan for your site where you want to put this thing. And then, of course, you still have to go through Group A, Group B. But the actual review of the structural system, the architectural system, and all of that, that's already done. And if it's something simple like this that you're willing to build, these are available. Okay? Yes?
Garage, do you have standard plans for multi-car garages, or do we just go online and get those, or?
I don't think that we do. Do we? We don't have them for a garage. And the reason is when we did these,
We're required to have what, like two
covered parking for 2 cars. But the reason these don't include a garage is because they weren't intended as a new residence. So yeah, if you're going to do this, you still need the site plan and the garage. How are you going to address parking? And anyway, these are available. We want to make this an easy process for you to use. If you're interested, call us. We'll give you more information about how to utilize these. Okay? All right, very good. Next. So, just really...
That actually brings up something. On some of these sites that do not originally have garages and parking areas, you can allow for that. New code requires that. It's still your private.
Okay, good question. Susan, so if the original house did not have parking to begin with because there was no room on the property, is that parking going to be a requirement for the new reconstruction?
Yeah.
Covered parking.
Covered parking.
If you are, it kind of gets that like for like. If you're replacing exactly what you had, you're allowed to replace exactly what you had and only exactly what you had. You won't have that requirement.
Okay.
All right? Okay, very good. This is just a real quick schematic of our process, our plan check cycle. We're reviewing the plans, and then we're either dealing directly with the designer until the plans are approved, or if you're involved, we're giving the plans to you, you're giving them to the designer, making decisions, and then it goes back. And it keeps going around and around until everything's addressed to make sure that the plans meet code and that you're not going to have any major problems in the field. And until we're satisfied of that, we won't approve the plans and we won't issue the permit. So just keep in mind, it seems simple, but you're going to be tempted to get involved. Make sure that you hire a reputable designer who can help you, understand those things you need to understand, and then just kind of keep the process going for you, okay, and allow you to make the decisions that you need to make as a property owner, okay? And we'll be glad to help you along the way, of course, also, okay? Next. And so how long is it going to take to receive a permit? Well, it depends. Hire an experienced licensed designer. Allow 2 weeks for the first plan review. Rechecks usually are done faster. But it really depends on the nature of the corrections during the first plan review. Usually the second review we can do in several days or a week, etc. Allow time for 1 or 2 rechecks. We talked about that. Ensure that your plans are complete when submitting them to Building and Safety. This will minimize the number of rechecks. Address the plan check corrections or requests for review. Verify that the code requirements and agency conditions are part of your design. Okay, we talked about that. All right, very good. Next. Is that it? Oh, okay. So during construction, so if everything goes well during the permitting process and the reviewing process, everything should already be addressed as far as building code requirements, and so it should be a fairly easy process at that point. Not that construction is going to be easy. There's all kinds of challenges that come up all the time. So I don't want to paint a very rosy picture for you. However, the better the plans are when they're prepared, the better your project is going to be. So make sure that your designer is good, and make sure that your contractor is licensed and experienced with the type of project that you have. Okay? Ensure that the contractor is reputable and experienced with the project type. He or she will build it faster and will give you, the property owner, fewer worries in the long run. Okay? Insist that the contractor obtain the permit. We talked about that. Verify that the contractor has obtained a building permit prior to commencing construction. Obvious, but doesn't always happen. And sometimes it just gets started because the permit's almost issued, so might as well just start, right? Ensure that the county certifies a new building for occupancy prior to finalizing the terms of your contract with the contractor. In other words, just because a building looks finished to you doesn't mean it's been approved. There may be some lingering corrections that the inspector wrote for the contractor along the way that haven't been approved or haven't been done. So you don't want to finalize your contract, pay the contractor. If there are any contractors here, I don't want to offend any of you. There's a lot of good, reputable contractors in town, but there's a few, and once in a while you'll run into one that, you know, will tell you the project is done, and there's several things that are still outstanding at the building department. So make sure that your building has been approved by Building and Safety, and that you have a what we call a C of O, Certificate of Occupancy. Okay? And then that means you're good. That's for your records, and the building's been certified by us, it meets code, everything's good to go. All right? What will the fees be for the permits? Okay, so the Board of Supervisors has taken action to waive a number of fees that are associated with the process to rebuild structures damaged by the Thomas Fire. Expedited review fee. So for example, in Building and Safety, for a small average house, that's about $1,400. For bigger houses, that can run into about 1,500 square feet. So if it's a bigger house, if you decide to build a large 5,000, 6,000 square feet, that fee will be bigger because it's based on the fee for the plan check for that larger house, which is based on the size. Demolition permits, $210. Those are waived. Temporary dwelling permits by planning. Tree permit for planning, $340, $167. Private sewer certification by environmental health, $117. And the permit to construct or repair a septic system, $244. Conventional OWTS, that's a septic system application, $1,009. And that is a range. Sometimes it could be even higher. All of these fees have been waived for these projects. And there's a lot of other little kind of miscellaneous fees that are also waived. I just didn't want to list them all because it's just not enough room. Okay? So just know that the Board of Supervisors has taken this step to, to give some relief to you all. Okay?
For what period of time?
For what period of time? Good question. I believe it's 5 years from January 1st of this year. So it's for applications that are submitted up to December 31st, 2022. Correct?
Some of the fees have a shorter time frame, and when we brought them to the board initially, and what we reported to the board and the board agreed was that once we see how long the process is taking, we will go back to them and get extensions as needed to make sure everyone can get through the process.
We felt that 5 years, and the board kind of agreed, that 5 years was a long time. It should be enough to cover most cases. Yes?
I'm sorry, this is what the OWTS stands for?
OWTS.
Septic system.
Waste treatment plant.
Yes, that's septic.
Septic was above.
Oh, there's an application and there's a repair, okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Yes?
You said those fees are all waived.
Wait, correct.
Okay.
Only if you're building to the same specs as the previous home? Or regardless?
No, so for example, let's see, let me think about this before I answer. Yeah, I think all these apply to your project regardless.
Okay, I had to
Yeah.
pay an arborist to check my trees, tell me what needed to be trimmed off, what needed to be covered up. But I was required to pay a fee. Do I get that back?
Well, you're still required to pay your arborist if you're gonna get an arborist report.
It wasn't an arborist fee, it went to planning.
Yeah, so the planning fee, I believe it's waived in certain cases for the tree permit. Susan? Or?
Phil, why don't you send me an email and I will follow up on that. We've had a couple instances because these fee waivers are a little unusual where we mistakenly collect the fees and then we do a refund. So please send a note to me or to Winston Wright and we'll follow up to make sure that it was appropriately charged.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Sure.
You might not get out of here tonight.
Hey, we got 11 more minutes.
Wow.
Okay, all right. Moving forward. So you also can visit the building safety counter or make an appointment by telephone, and we will be glad to help you with the process. Just like your meeting with Winston, we will have a sit-down meeting and conversation with you, explain the process, what's required in your case, and we will guide you and help you. Okay, so this is where you can contact us, and one of the permit techs can sit down and meet with you, whether it's during your permit application submittal or for anything else. Call this number and we will make an appointment to see you. Okay? Next. One more thing that's really important. There's a GIS report that we can generate that has all the applicable or most of the applicable site information for your project. We'll give you applicable site restrictions or pertinent information needed to design your project. GIS is a Geographic Information System, I believe. And that's just our mapping system that we have at the county. We will look up your property. If you call us and give us an APN, we will look up your property and generate the report. You can take that report and give it to your designer. It'll have a lot of the information he's going to need, or not all of it, but it's going to get him started. Okay? Can we get that online? No, not this one. Not this one. Yet. Okay.
But you could submit your request, send in an email with that request, and the report can be generated and an email back. You don't have to make a trip to the county government.
All right, cool. Is this the same as the topographic? Because the number looks familiar. I sent for, I think it was called GIS, but it's a topo map. But there wasn't any information regarding.
This is a report. Now you can get a topographic printout of your site because that's one of the layers in our GIS system. Yeah, you can get that too. This is a report that tells you who the purveyors are and, just.
Tells you your zoning, your planning, what school district you're in, who the water purveyor is, if you're in an archaeologically sensitive area, sometimes.
You're in a floodway, if you're in a fault zone.
Fire zone.
Yeah, so there's a lot of facts that'll help you know.
All that. We know you're in a fire zone. We were in a fire zone. Sorry, you were. Yes, over there.
Provide the email address, not just.
The email address, you know what? What is it?
Building@ventura.org.
Building?
Yeah, building@ventura.org.
Thank you, Roman. Okay,
You
next.
have to pay a fee.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead.
No, I just said there are fees for these reports here.
No, this is a free report, free of charge.
Oh, okay.
So just call us, we'll get that out to you. We're not going to charge you
The
anything.
topo map.
Oh, yeah, total map, yeah. Picture. Yes.
Okay, I need to get power into my property now because I'm trying to fix the pool and get the pump going. But I was told I need to have a home attached to the power panel. So, how can I get electricity to my pool?
Well, if you lost your home and you need electricity to maintain your pool, generally, generally, if you need temporary power, we will give you a permit for a temporary power pole that you can use to have Edison install a temporary power pole.
Okay, where do I go to?
Okay, you can either call or send an email to Building and Safety, and we'll send you a temporary power pole application.
Call for an Edison planner. I did the same thing on my property.
Yeah.
If you have power now?
I got a temporary power pole put in. The construction power pole, we just need to talk to a planner.
Yeah.
And the permit was pretty easy to get.
Usually those we do right over the counter, so they don't have to follow this extensive process.
We've issued dozens of those, and if you saw the fee, that's one of the fee waiver items, as a matter of fact. So it's a pretty simple.
Yeah, for a 10 power pole, yes.
You mentioned there was this presentation is online.
We're going to put it online. It's not online yet. So if you're looking it up right now, you're not going to find
No,
it.
I'm not. Okay. So
Yes.
where will it be?
Well, where will it be?
It'll be, we have the county has a rebuilding website. It'll also be on the Resource Management Agency, Building and Safety, planning their websites. And we're actually, as you see, they're being filmed. Today and tomorrow, we're doing one in Ventura. We're going to film those, and when those get ready, we're going to have those up as well. So we're trying to get as much information out there as possible.
That fee waiver for temporary power is only, according to Building and Safety, because I tried to get a refund on mine, only for temporary housing. I needed to run my well so I could have water for my llamas, and I'm eventually going to rebuild. But I was charged $95 or $97. I put in an application for a refund, and I was denied because it's only for temporary housing, not for pools or for
No, that's a good point. That these are tied to the replacement housing, which is what the board was focusing on. That's correct.
I'm going to use it for that eventually.
There's no llama waiver?
What is a, okay, so it's $95. Llama waiver? No llama waivers, okay? All right. Okay, is there any other slides, or is this it? Oh, okay, yeah, go to the next one. All right, any questions? Okay, yes. We have time for a few more questions. Please.
Any information on the granny flat?
Okay, granny flats. You don't need to call them granny flats anymore. We now call them accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. And those are relatively easy to approve now. You first go to planning. Planning will approve it, and then you come to Building and Safety, either using one of our standard plans that we will give you, or you bring in your own design, and then we'll review it, take it through the process. And if it's a replacement for a burnt building, then we will expedite it and take it through that expedited process. But if it's just a granny flat or just an ADU that doesn't replace a burnt building, it just has to wait a little bit longer because we have a lot of other
So does that follow like 700 square feet?
Does it follow 700 square feet?
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Like the one that you have a standard plan for 700.
Yeah.
So is that the same? I'm the city boy,
Yeah. Yeah, you can use a 700 or 900 square feet or up to 1,200 square feet. So you could use, but don't call it a granny flat when you come in. Call it an ADU, okay? Includes a kitchen, a bath, and all that information. And so anyway, so one more question, and then I want to give the floor to Rick a little bit to talk about.
I'll stay for 2 minutes. I'll make it
Okay, okay, yes.
Just real quick, replacing an ADU that was limited to 900, but now since it's 1,200, I'd like to add on the extra 300. Now, the Prop 13 stuff, I was told would hold true for the 900 that I had. What happens with the other 300 that I'm not, is that as today's assessment, or does the whole building come up to today's?
So Chris can help us with
Yeah, I was talking with the county assessor today, asking them if he had handouts for us, because they have a methodology. The answer unfortunately was no, but he has go to the assessor's webpage, and I guess he has a page that describes frequently asked questions. That's one of them. My understanding is that the 900 square feet will be under the Prop 13 level. The additional will be assessed at the current value. Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, Rick is going to say a few things, 2 minutes, and then after that, I've got one question for you. Go ahead.
Thank you, and I won't be heard if anybody does decide to get up. I realize it's been a long couple hours. My name is Rick Lopes with the Contractor State License Board. I just want to take just a couple of minutes as you're going through the process of trying to identify and hire a contractor, a couple of things to look for. All of the information's in the pamphlet, so I'm not going to be obviously going through a lot of things, but please take these with you if you haven't grabbed them already. We do have an extensive website with videos and other things on how to get through the process. The main things, first of all, is everybody, if they hired a contractor, you're still looking, you're just starting that process? Can you give me are you? Yeah, so if you're still in the process where you're trying to identify people to give you bids, I would suggest making sure you get the flyer. That it's a new website feature that we have on our website called Find My Licensed Contractor. With that, you can input either your city or your zip code and the kind of contractor you're looking for. We have all 40-something licensing classifications. So if you're looking for a general contractor, that would be a B general contractor. If it happens to be an electrician, or if you're looking for somebody who has a specialty one, you could do on that, hit the search button. It will give you a list of all currently licensed contractors in that classification in that geographic area. Now, there are some limitations, especially when we get out here into the rural areas of the county. You may have to do a couple of different searches with a couple different zip codes, because this is based on where the contractor's license, their address of record. So it's not perfect, but it is a good place to start. So I would encourage you to do that. Also, take advantage of our license lookup feature. All contractors that are licensed, it's for all jobs over $500, and obviously everything we're talking about is well over $500. They have to have a state license. In any kind of advertising, as you're looking for contractors, they need to have their contractor's license number in their ad, whether it be online, on the side of their truck, on a flyer, on a business card they give you. So look for that. It's either going to be a 6 or 7-digit number. Come to our website, plug that number in. With just a couple of clicks, you'll find out all of their information, what their address is, who are the people on this license. If we've taken any administrative actions against that license, it'll tell you the classification that they're supposed to be doing work in, whether it's a general or a plumber or an electrician. It also has workers' compensation, which is something you want to ask of anybody, and you want proof of this. You want to make sure your contractors, if they're going to have a crew, which everybody's going to, nobody's going to be doing this as a one-person job, they need to make sure their workers are covered with workers' comp insurance in case somebody gets hurt on your property. If they're not, there's a chance they could come after you for their medical bills for the workers. So when you look up their license, it's going to do one of two things. It's going to either say that they've told the contractors board they have no employees and they're exempt, or it's going to include the workers' comp policy number and the company there. So if you've got somebody giving you bids and they've got an exemption there, you want to follow up and ask them about workers' comp. If they show you something, you actually want to call the policy and make sure they don't have the policy for 2 office workers and they have 15 people out on your property. You just want to make sure workers' comp is in place. That absolutely will protect yourself. There's no exceptions. If you do nothing else besides making sure they got a license and making sure the workers are covered with workers' comp insurance, that will go a long way to protecting you. Mechanics liens, there's information there. As you go through the process, you want to be sure to get releases. So that means if a subcontractor doesn't get paid, they can't come back to you and make you pay a second time. There's a brochure back there that gets into that. We talked about the building permits. Make sure your contractor, that puts them on the hook. If not, and if you don't let them talk you into doing this as an owner-builder project, this is much too big and much too complicated. It makes you responsible. If there's something wrong and it doesn't pass code, you've got no leverage over them because they're not on the permit. So you want to make sure that you do that. And as far as references, we talked about, you want to actually find people who've done this work before. You want to go out and see it. Ask them if they've actually got jobs in various stages. Maybe a job they did 5 years ago, a job they just finished, a job they're in the middle of. Actually go out and see the project, talk to those homeowners. How did they show up on time? Did they clean up after themselves? Did they do what they said they were going to do? Do some of that homework and really check these people out. There's a lot of contractors, over 280,000 in the state. And you're going to be able to find a good contractor. It's going to just take a little time. You don't want to get into the situation, and never let the money and your payments get ahead of the work that's being done. Your money is your best leverage on your contractors, so don't pay them. Have progress payments spelled out in your contract. When this is done, passes inspections, done to my satisfaction, I will pay you for this amount. When it gets to the next step, I will pay you for that amount. Don't let those payments get in front of the work, because then you've lost your leverage. And that's when we run into problems of contractors, I'm not showing up once in a while, trying to get them out. Or they'll come back and they'll ask for more money. I need money to go buy materials. You're going to want contractors who have credit with their suppliers. I mean, you want to find there's plenty of professional, good contractors out there. Don't let either the unlicensed people or the people who might have a license but aren't really good business people, let them go get hired by somebody else. And the last thing I would just say is we are doing a seminar like this for contractors tomorrow. As those of you who are either finding them or looking for them or starting to look for them, what kind of things can you tell me that I can tell them tomorrow so they don't piss you off, so they're giving you the information you need? I know there's situations where they just, they start going around, start knocking on doors or going around and bugging you. Is there anything specifically that's something, God, if I wish that contractors knew?
Show up.
Yeah, I'll definitely make the point.
So readily having a body capacity and some way of demonstrating financial stability that just talk to, I think, is critical. I mean, it's so frequently asked for, and it's, it kind of doesn't really get done. That having that up front is always good.
Yeah, and contractors by law are required to have a $15,000 surety bond. That's no way going to cover this if you have a huge problem. So one thing you should consider, and look online, there's lots of information on this, is possibly getting a project bond. You can have a bond that's maybe 3 or 4% of your contract price, but it's going to be a bond that's in place to ensure that it passes inspections, that if people don't get paid, that it will pay them. So it's something to look at and consider. It's not required, but it's something that might be worth the extra investment to give you that extra sense of protection. I'm happy to answer questions. If not, I think we're ready to get out of here. Thank you for your attention, and the best of luck to all of you. I know this has been a long project, and my congratulations to the folks from the county too. We're all learning by doing in the progress, so we appreciate your patience with all of us. And know that you're not alone, that there are a lot of people here that want you to get through this process and get rebuilt and get back in your house. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, just real quick before you guys get up and leave, I wanted to ask you guys a question. Well, let me say one thing and then I'll ask a question. I know we're out of time, but there are additional handouts and information in the back tables pertaining to some of the questions you were asking and some of the engineering stuff. I think our staff from the county will hang out a few minutes if you have a specific question you want to ask them. And then the question I have for you is later on, as you guys get started with your project, do you see that it would be of benefit or a need for us to come to the community? We have a building and safety trailer that is generally designed for emergencies, but it's fitted with equipment and information, and we could set it up in the community here to answer questions that you might have so that you don't have to go to Ventura. Or what do you guys think? I mean, is that kind of an overkill? Is it better just to go over there, or do you guys think it might be helpful?
Would we be able to conduct business?
Would you be able to conduct business? See, I don't think that you'd be able to do everything that you would be able to do at the Hall of Administration, but you might be able to answer most of the questions that you would have. But we just wanted to get your feedback to see if it's something that the group or the community feels is a needed service.
I think it'd be an excellent benefit, but we need to know what kind of services would be offered. Because, I mean, if it can take care of a couple trips down to Ventura for all of us, it would be fabulous. So, like Winston's 2-hour meetings, if we could maybe get him up here, so we could schedule meetings.
Okay. Okay, so we'll hook it up to Winston's car. Okay. Good. Yes. We had a comment or a question.
Something I think that would be very helpful is if the county had one email website that all Upper Ojai homeowners could go to for any question that asked, and then the person that receives it at the county can filter it to where it needs to go, rather than saying, oh, no, you need to go to building and safety. No, you need to go to environmental health. No, you need to go see Roman or Winston or Jim or whoever it is. To have just set up one email website. Everyone can address their question to that email, because that would serve as a trailer.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to go visit the trailer. You just get on your phone and say, question regarding Upper Ojai building, whatever it is, and it gets filtered from there to the appropriate agency. That would really
that's actually a really good idea.
That would be a lot more cost effective.
Yeah.
And posting those questions and answers that come back so that people are able to kind of.
Some of us have gone through the process of like building in a size of its own, and we can help each other. I know we're already kind of doing that.
You could almost do it as a community bulletin board.
And that would be particularly valuable because we're at different stages. We're not all progressing along at the same time. case.
So that might in some ways work better than bringing the trailer over here.
Yeah, that case, yeah.
Okay, well, we'll look into that. I think that's a great idea. We'll look to see what the logistics are in making that work to help you. It might even be something that we can do for everybody else too.
We're full of great ideas.
Okay. I wanted to thank you once again for your patience and just being here. I know it's a little warm, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we have, okay, thank you. Have a good evening.